Hello! In this video, I'm going to talk to you about sharing your story and not being afraid to be authentically yourself, not just to the mothers and women you already know, but the mothers that you would like to come to your circles, and also when you're talking about your circles, and also yourself on social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. Now, I totally get that it can feel really scary putting yourself out there, because when we put ourselves out there, we are opening ourselves up to comments and considerations and either favourable things or objections from other people, and that can feel like a really scary place. Now, when I first started doing this, I found it really difficult, and I used to really worry what people were going to say, but I came to realise pretty quickly that you gather your own tribe, and the people that make negative comments, who don't really show respect to what you have to say, aren't the women and the mothers that you want to have in your circles in the first place. And in my experience, you don't get many people like that. So please don't feel fearful about sharing your story. It is one of the greatest ways to build trust and rapport with your mothers, with your audience, and to create your own village, your own tribe. People learn through trust, and people want to know that you understand their story, that you've been in their shoes, that you're kind, that you're caring. And by talking on video, you really get your personality across. Now, stories can be shared in writing, stories can be shared in the form of poems and words, but there's nothing quite as powerful as a video, such as this video that I'm doing for you right now. You'll probably have a far better understanding of my journey and my story than if I were to simply present this to you as a Word document. So I'm telling you to get out there, and I'm encouraging you, and I'm empowering you, and I'm reminding you how great you are, and that sharing your story gives you, a joy. It gives you a freedom. It's really refreshing actually be able to talk to people and to know that you are getting to them in a really positive and powerful way. We empower others by sharing our stories, and in doing so, we also give other people permission to share theirs, and that is an amazing thing to be able to do. So let me share a little bit about my story with you. So I am a mum of two, as you know. Grace is 18 and Neve is 14. Before I had children, I was a lawyer. I was a real estate senior associate in a large national law firm. So my job was very high pressured, extremely long hours, very demanding clients, and completely client driven. So as a lawyer, you're selling your time, so you are at the beck and call of your clients. My husband's also a lawyer. He's now a partner in a corporate team. So even then, before we had Grace, we were both working extremely long hours and very dedicated to our jobs, and our jobs meant a great deal to us. Now, my experience of women in my working world wasn't very positive at all. There weren't as many women as men, as you can imagine, in the legal field at that time. And when I did have another female lawyer on the other side of a job, it became quite tricky, became quite difficult. I found women not easy to deal with. It was almost as if it was a challenge to get a negotiation point over on another woman, rather than us coming together and working together and resolving things in that way. So my experience of other lawyers wasn't always positive. The female women in the law firm above me, they were women who qualified as lawyers in the 80s. They were in an extremely male environment, and I think the way that they succeeded was by becoming very masculine in themselves, and it was all about being driven and focused. And I'd hear stories about female partners that stayed working right up until their due date, and waters were breaking in client meetings, and then they'd be back at their desk 2 weeks after they had a baby. And I was almost led to believe that wanting to take time off to have children was a sign of weakness rather than a strength. So I didn't have any positive role models, and the team that I worked in was led by male partners, and the senior partner didn't have any children of his own, so there was absolutely no understanding there. And in fairness, before I had children, I just didn't get it, as I'm sure you'll understand. Until you've become a mother, you just simply can't understand exactly how that feels. So my working career wasn't a positive experience for me in terms of building and bonding and creating relationships with certainly women above me. I had good relationships with the women at my level, and I was also a mentor for younger junior lawyers, and that was amazing. I absolutely loved that part of my job. Now, on a personal level, I have a mum and I have a sister. I don't have any other siblings, so we're a very female family, but I didn't have a close relationship with my mum and I wasn't particularly close to my sister. We are building those bridges now. I didn't value female friendships in my teenage years because I didn't have anyone telling me how important other women were. I went to an all-girls school, so I did have female friends, but I had a boyfriend at the age of 15 and I prioritised him over my female relationship, something that I do regret now because I totally understand how valuable having girls and women and female friendships around you is. So I managed, I had loads of coping techniques. I didn't think I was an anxious kind of person. I was successful in my career. My life seemed to be just rolling along fine. And then I had Grace. And my expectations of me as a mother were set way too high. So when Grace arrived, I suffered with postnatal depression. I was very, very anxious. I catastrophized about anything. I saw risks around every single corner. Grace had terrible eczema to the point that she was sleeping in wet wraps. She would wake up with blood on her clothes in the morning because her skin was so sensitive. We went to see various specialists. I blame myself because I'd had eczema as a child and also a severe bout of eczema in my late 20s, which led to me having time off work. And I did what I think many of us do as mothers, and we go straight into that place of mum guilt and overwhelm. It was one of the most lonely times of my life and really, really sad. And I openly talk about this with my mums because I see the sadness in their faces as well, that motherhood isn't quite as they expected. So that's what I mean by don't being afraid to share your story, because the right people will come to you because they relate to you and they resonate with you and they trust you. And that's what's really important when you're building your circle. And one of the most difficult things when I had Grace was my loneliness, because I didn't have that close relationship with my mum and my sister, even though they weren't geographically that far away. They didn't understand. I didn't feel that I was able to talk to them about what I was going through. I'd always been the strong one. You know, I didn't break down in front of them. I was taught that strong people sort things out themselves. They don't go to other people for help. And I just didn't have a circle of female friends or new mums that I could turn to. I didn't do any baby classes with Grace. I'd done an NCT group, but we'd had to do one about 10, 15 miles away because all the ones locally to me here in Birmingham were fully booked. So I simply had nobody. I went back to work when Grace was 4.5 months old, and it was really, really difficult. It was one of the hardest times of my life. But I think that going back to work gave me something that I was familiar with just to literally grab onto and hang on to for the next few years. We had a 4-year gap between Grace and Eve because I just wasn't emotionally ready to have another child until that point. And it wasn't until I stopped working as a lawyer when Grace was 8 and Eve was 4 that I had time on my hands to go back, reassess how I had been with Grace, and then seek help. So I went to counselling or mentoring coaching for about 2 years, and I spent a lot of that time talking about my emotions and my feelings and my expectations on myself when I became a mum, and also my relationship with my own mum and also my relationship with other women. I did a lot of work on myself. I did a lot of reading around divine feminine, masculine and feminine archetypes, lots of goddess work, and I really made a huge effort to change how I looked at myself and how I looked on other women and mothers, to see them as allies and friends rather than enemies, which is almost how I felt that I'd been educated about women when I was younger, and the stories that I'd held on to simply needed to be let go. So I let go of those. Then I had some time. I took a year off. I started a maternity wear business, realised I hated being in the retail world, so stopped doing that. Then I saw the opportunity to train as a yoga teacher, specialising in pregnancy and postnatal yoga. And I knew deep down in my very core, I knew that my soul calling was to work with mums and babies. And if I can just stop one mum feeling the way I did when I had Grace, then that does light me up from the inside. It is so important for women to have women. I know from my own experiences, the loneliness and the isolation of not having invested time in creating circles of female friendships. And it's a really dangerous and an unhappy place to be. So when I share my story, I'm very open with where I was and how I didn't have this tribe. And that is why creating a tribe, not just for myself, but for other mothers, is so, so important to me. So when I started my classes, one of my really big, I guess, selling points, my USPs, were that my classes were a community. They were a place for mums to come together in pregnancy and postnatally, so with their babies at this time, to share, to meet other mums, to create friendships, to be open, to be authentic, to not worry about how they look, to not worry about whether they arrive early or late, to not be anxious about coming out of the house for the first time with their baby, but to know that whichever of my classes they came to, that they would be welcomed with open arms, and that it would be a really safe space to be authentically themselves. I try to go back to the me that I was when I had Grace, put myself in her shoes and talk through her voice and her eyes and her worries and her anxieties. If you are listening to this video now and some of it rings true, then share. Please don't be scared to share your story. You may have had the most amazing journey through motherhood. You might have the most supportive mum, fantastic family around you, and that puts you in a fantastic place to be able to give the love and the sharing and the warmth you received to your mums as well who are attending your circles. So your story may be very, very different to mine. We all have so many different things to offer and so many things to bring to our spaces. I just really want you to know and to understand that it is so important that you are honest and truthful and that you feel comfortable in sharing your journey. So my journey now is every time a mum joins my classes, I light up from the inside. It's just amazing to have this fantastic group of women around me. I mean, I have hundreds of women that I've worked with, that I've shared space with here in Birmingham. When I go out for a walk, I generally bump into one or two of them. If I run through a local park, I can normally bump into a mum, and I get to see babies who are now 5 and 6 starting school. And I used to be really amazed that every time a new group of mums started in my classes, how lovely they were and how nice they were. And I just think I had a negative experience and my viewpoint of women was completely skewed. So it's been a huge, huge learning curve for me, appreciating and understanding the value of female friendships. And that's the message that we want to portray to our mothers and our women who are looking to come to our circles. Now, you create the space and women will come because we need this. We need to be able to be authentically ourselves and without being judged. And the best way that you can demonstrate that that's what your circles are is by being authentic and not fearing judgment of yourself by sharing your own story. So if you could go away from this video and just write down 5 or 6 points that you think the mothers wanting to come to your circles would want to hear. So if you were a mum who'd never been to a mother circle or a woman's circle before, what would you want to hear from the woman hosting that circle to make you feel comfortable, to make you know that you could trust her, to help you to understand that the woman empathizes with you and she's been through what you're going through and that she's kind and that she's caring. You know, it's so important to create a safe space for your mothers, not just from the moment they step inside of your circle, but from the very first moment they come across you, whether that's in person, in writing, or on social media. And one of the very best ways to get your point across on social media is to tell your story, perhaps in one video or in a series of videos, or if you have a website, to have a video on that website of you just explaining a little bit about yourself. It doesn't have to be as in-depth as I've gone into. It doesn't have to take as long as this. Now, I'm very comfortable sharing my space with you because I know that the reason you're here is because creating safe space for mothers calls to you and it's your sole purpose and it's really important and that you want to make a difference. And sometimes to make a difference, we just have to push ourselves outside of our comfort box a little bit. Because lots of these mums who come to your circles will also be stepping outside of their comfort zone, stepping into a space where they're going to tell a little bit about their story to other mothers. Can feel scary. And so be the example, be the light, be the shining person, be the sequins, be the sparkle. Bring joy and empowerment to the mothers who want to step into your spaces by showing them that you are powerful, that you are strong, and that you're not afraid to tell your story. Because I'm telling you, there are more women out there who will welcome your story, who will listen to your words, who it will resonate, and you will bring safety and comfort to than those that might be negative. And just forget the negativity. They are not the people that you want in your tribe. So please write down those 5 or 6 things, and then we can go through them when we next meet. Take great care.